My church has never spoke out against the destruction. Some churches have spoke against it, but mine has not. I still go every Sunday. I can guarantee you I've never talked before about any of this out loud. The buck, the dreams, the feel in the woods. Before, I didn't even want God to hear. I especially didn't want God to hear. But of course, they say he hears everything. I was ashamed at how I couldn't match up what they teach at church and what I know from the woods. But as I got older, and it is true sicker, I understand more and I feel less guilt about it. I understand that church mostly touches just the part of me that knows right from wrong, the part that says, you better not. As I get bold enough to think it, I understand church don't seep into me no deeper or fuller than that, and it is very sad to feel no more than that from church. Still, I can't know no different. Any sacred I have ever got close to has come straight out of these hills. As the headaches get worse, the dreams do too. Looking back now, I believe it started, these new ones, with me dreaming animals with metal for teeth. A couple times I dreamed just that, a normal deer with metal pressed in their gums. Then I dreamed I shot a buck and went to gut him, and I found he had a plastic bag for a belly. After that, I dreamed I was out walking and found glass scat. I dreamed leaves falling as ash. Then those dreams passed too, and I stopped dreaming animals. I stopped dreaming woods at all. Instead, I dream that the world tilts, and I see crowds of good people can't keep their footing and they all fall and slide into a corner, or I dream I'm out in my yard and everything just stops. It's like a clock running down, one where you don't notice it ticking until it stops, but then it does stop, and I feel the universe dead quiet in its halt. And now, finally, I've got to where I dream without pictures at all. It's just a dream of sound. There is nothing to the dream but an alarm going off, a horn with a beat to it. Wah, 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 wah. I don't need no Daniel to interpret that dream. There is what my reason tells me. There is what my church tells me. There is what my dreams tell me. There is what this land tells me. I'm coming to accept that I'll never bring all those things together before I die. But on my strongest days, I can tell myself without guilt or fear, it is not paganism or idolatry or sacrilege or sin. It's just what I know. And what they tell me, these things I finally let myself trust, is what we're doing to this land is not only murder, it is suicide. It's hard to tell stories about hunting for things that never get found. I try not to be downcast. I try to keep hold of my heart. I have Mary and I have my boys. Some of the woods are left, and I still have the strength in my legs to walk up into them. Even with the problems in my head, I can get back in the mountain. And many people, like Robbie, sick now with diabetes and cancer both, can't even do that. And despite my recent terrible dreams, something different happened in my sleep just a week ago. I went to bed real early before it was dark, with a headache so bad it was upsetting my stomach. I fell asleep pretty quick, and then I dreamed I was in a little grassy clearing. It felt good to me in that clearing. How I do love being down in a place, the good, safe feeling of land all around. Then, while I was standing there quiet and glad, an old doe walked up to me. She stepped right up to me, and I looked back in her brown eyes, and she said, "This is what it's like inside my head." Then she shelled her head open. It just fell open in easy halves. And as she did it, there spilled out of it and over me this light, a color of green I'd never seen before. The light from her head carried in it the feeling I'd had in the little room where the buck wasn't. That feeling I'd only had twice since. That feeling I had never been able to make come on my own. Only this time, when I blended beyond myself with the sureness, the peace, the sureness and peace kept growing. Bigger beyond anything I'd ever felt, it swelled and spread, I swelled and spread until there was not anything else. No woods and no doe and no light and no me. until there was all. It was all. Not nothing, not something, just all. I guess you'd call it the peace that passeth understanding. I guess you'd say it come by grace.
You're listening to Books on the Bed, where I travel through the country asking our hosts, if I came to your town and stayed at your house, what books would you put on my bed? Each host will share 6 books for me to carry with me on the journey of my life. And I'm here to share those books with you. As we go, we're building a digital library put on every bed across the country. And who knows, maybe someday, the world. We are trying to share as many diverse stories as possible to part a curtain between us and bring us closer to each other. We hope these books and conversations make a meaningful difference in your life. Thank you for listening and being with us on this journey. Well, I thought I'd start with something funny that came up last year when I was preparing, sometime in the summer. And I saved this article because I thought it was interesting. It was a writer from West Virginia. I don't remember his name. I don't even know if he's like part of the West Virginia writing community, but I think it was on LitHub. And the title of the article was, Nobody is Writing the Real West Virginia.
Oh, I've heard of this article.
And the funny part about it is one of the first 5 comments was something to the effect of, I can't believe someone is so ignorant as to not know who Ann Pancake is, who is not only one of the greatest Appalachian writers, but writers ever.
Oh, wow. That's very generous.
And that was one of the first comments. And I was like, thank you. Because the article was like,
yeah.
Really? No one's writing the real West Virginia?
I have to figure out who wrote that because I do remember reading it. But, yeah.
And it was almost 10 years ago now.
Oh, was it that
long ago?
It was long ago.
Okay. And I
remember it though.
But I was like, that seems pretty ignorant, right? I'm glad someone called it out. But, I resonated with that, even as a non-native West Virginian, because truly, I would say you are one of the greatest writers I've ever read.
Oh, Matt, thank you. But
I mean, you've really opened my world, changed my life with your words.
Really?
It's just one of those things. There's certain authors, like I told you before with Welty.
Yeah.
Willa Cather. I was just at her childhood home in Gore, Virginia. Your words have done the same thing to me as theirs have. Thank you. And I really just thank you for that.
Thank you.
I think our world would be missing something great without your books.
No, that's very
and your stories.
Very sweet of you.
And so, I often think about in Death Comes for the Archbishop by Willa Cather, that moment where, the quote that's, miracles are not something that comes from afar, but it's what makes you see the things in front of you more finely.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think your words have really helped me do that. I think I appreciate my life more. Because of having read it. And I have no reason to blow smoke, truly. I mean, I came all the way here because I'm just thrilled that I get to meet you and that we've connected. When you came into City Lights, I was like, oh my gosh, this is my chance. And so I'm so glad it's finally happening. But the reason I say that is because I need to give you gifts of thanks to start this interview.
Thank you, Matt. Well, I thank you right back. Oh, you're actually giving me physical gifts.
Of course I am.
Wow, thank you.
You're Ann Pancake. I have to give you these gifts.
Thank you very much.
So you can open them now.
Okay, all right.
So this first one, if I'm not mistaken, I'll give some context for it when you open it up.
Okay. It's beautiful paper.
City Lights Bookstore.
Oh, wow. Okay. I do not know this book. Ground Glass, Catherine Savage.
So Catherine was on the first season of Books on the Bed.
Okay.
And I read this book years ago because a friend of mine in Asheville had told me about her. And I actually saw her read at Welty's house.
Whoa.
In Jackson with Katie Simpson-Smith, who's friends with her from graduate school. But the reason I got this book for you is it's the story of her growing up on the fence line of industry.
Okay.
In North Minneapolis.
Oh, okay.
So I used to live in St. Paul.
Yeah, yeah.
And I actually never heard of Catherine when I lived there.
Yeah.
But when I moved down to North Carolina and read this book, it made me think like, wow, I missed this.
Yeah.
The whole area of North Minneapolis and the Humboldt industrial area, has contaminated water and the ground and the air. And so there's the story of her father's cancer and the grief from that. But also she asked the question, like, what happens when you are now a site of contamination, your body?
Wow.
So she's dealing with that grief. But then what's really beautiful about this book is the friends she makes through this grief. One of them is a Cherokee elder in eastern Oklahoma who is trying to save Tar Creek because of the mining at Pitcher.
Okay.
And another one is Keisha Brown, who's in Birmingham, Alabama, another neighborhood where, like, they said your children shouldn't even, they have to bathe when they come back inside.
Wow.
You shouldn't do cookouts.
Yeah.
That,
Yeah.
you know. So anyway.
Wow. Thank you, Matt.
It's a really interesting exploration of issues that I think are dear to your heart, just in a different state.
Yeah.
So I try to bring states together through these stories. And I think you and Catherine have a lot in common.
Thank you. Thank you.
And she's a beautiful writer. Yeah. That's the first one.
I'm reading it as I right now.
Well, and it's in conversation with like a million books in there and movies. It's it's a very culturally powerful book because of just how many things it brings in.
Wow, yeah, now I'm seeing,
It's a unique format too, which I like. It's a unique
format,
because it's not just a standard story. Like, hey, here, let me lay it out for you. It kind of jumps all over the place. And, that's how my brain works.
Yeah, that's good.
And it's part of the reason I liked Strange as This Weather Has Been, being broken into different points of view, because I find that much more interesting to kind of keep going back and forth, different ages, all that. So that's the first one.
Okay, I'm going to open the second one. Thank you very much. You didn't have to bring me gifts.
I did have to bring you gifts.
You came all this
You
way.
invited me to your home. This is wonderful.
I don't know this one either. Trinity by Zelda Lockhart, and it's autographed.
I would say this. Zelda has as powerfully impacted me as you have.
Okay.
She's from Durham.
Okay.
Well, lives in Durham, North Carolina now. And I met her at the Mississippi Book Fest via Annette Sonu Clapsaddle. And she was, I believe, my first interview for this podcast.
Oh, okay.
But Trinity, I think, has elements to its story that are similar in terms of how you write. But this one comes from the experience of, instead of a white family that has land that might be gone and is under threat, it's what happens when you have no land at all.
Yeah.
And Trinity is just, it is a heck of a book.
So is this a novel or what is
Yes, it is a novel.
Cool. Okay.
And so it's about a spirit child.
Okay.
That is hoping to heal these wounds that are generational because of violence inflicted upon Black men.
Okay.
Particularly.
Interesting. Yeah.
And if you read the back, she talks about how this is, to honor her father, who she remembers as a boy, tries to remember as a boy just fishing on a creek in Mississippi. So it's a really empathetic book to just what happens when you have you're stolen from your land. Yeah. It's now post-slavery, but what do you do when you have nowhere to go? Yeah. Well, you go to war and you come back and it's not any better, right? And you're just trying to find a home. You're trying to heal. But man, that book really did something to me, and I think you will appreciate all that. And she's one of the realest people ever.
Okay.
Like, she is electric because you know that she's just an honest person.
Yeah.
Who is giving you her heart and soul.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think you'll like both of these books.
Okay. I am looking forward to them. Thank you very much.
Yeah, of course. Well, while we're here, I thought it would be cool to tell people where we're at.
Okay.
If you can explain what Arthurdale is.
All right. We're in Preston County, West Virginia, north central West Virginia, and we're in Arthurdale, which was a subsistence homestead community during the New Deal. It was I think it was the very first one. And the Roosevelts set up these subsistence homestead communities to take people who are in bad circumstances and move them into, in this case, little 4-acre homesteads where they could try to rebuild their lives, and also it was a huge social experiment that was accused of socialism at times. So there was a sense of people working together, having a co-op. And the people who came here were mostly, about half of them were miners from Scotch Run, which is up right on the Pennsylvania border, West Virginia-Pennsylvania border. Very bad situation during the Depression. One of the interesting things about the creation of Arthurdale is that it came basically from a queer relationship, which isn't really concluded in the history very much. So,
Whoa.
well, yeah, Eleanor had a lot of women friends, and it's pretty clear that she had a romantic relationship with some of these women. There's a lot of documentation of it, actually. There's an amazing book called Eleanor and Hick, which I have in the other room, which is about Lorena Hickok, who was a lesbian journalist at that time. And she came over to do reportage on Scott's Run during the Depression, which was in terrible shape. And she went back to Washington and told her friend Eleanor, you need to do something. This is a place where you can make a difference. And that led to Eleanor coming to West Virginia and then deciding to pick this particular area, which is about 30 miles south of Scott's Run, for people to be moved to. So it has a dark side. It was segregated. They did not let black people live here. Very few. It was mostly Anglo-Saxon white people that they brought down from Scott's Run. They left everybody else up there. It is considered an economic failure because no one was really able to support themselves just by farming here and working in the factories that kept going out of business. But it still has, it's been 90 years, over 90 years. It still has a very strong sense of community and history, and there's still descendants of the original homesteaders who are here, and we have a really great community center, heritage center, that is both preserving the history but also doing, at this point, a lot of interesting Appalachian programming, which we're doing partly as a reaction to WVU making Appalachian studies impossible. And when that started coming down, and this is when Travis Steinle was still alive, and he and I and my partner Caitlin talked about it, like, how are we going to take Appalachian studies out of an institution? And so I could go on and on, but that's where we are. We're in a stone house. There are 165 houses. There are about 155 left of the original houses. And so this one was built in 1936 by local people who were taught by Italian stonemasons how to put this house together. So wow. yeah, it's very cool. Yeah, so that is where we are. I did not grow up in Preston County. I grew up in Nicholas County and then in Hampshire County, which Nicholas County is south of here and Hampshire County is east of here. But we chose this house when WVU hired me to come back and teach. I knew I didn't want to be up in Morgantown. So,
I don't blame you. I do not blame you.
So we were very lucky to find.
Well, and it's beautiful.
This place.
Yeah, it's beautiful country out here.
Yeah,
I mean, and this is why I like being on the road.
Yeah.
And I get it. People might say, "Oh, waste of time. You could do this from your house."
No,
but you can't.
Yeah,
I mean, I would have never known about this place. Well, obviously, had I not met you and come here, I wouldn't have seen it. But I remember Jesse being like, "Oh, you're going to love going there in our interview," because I didn't know you lived in Arthurdale.
Okay, yeah.
And, I had briefly heard of it years ago, but never thought anything of it, because this is just I have no connection to West Virginia. And so to be here and to see it, it's kind of how I fell in with Mississippi. It's like I needed to see places.
Yeah, you're exactly right.
And so now I'm here, and it's just so cool to know the history. Well, and speaking of Hampshire County, I'm going to break my phone rule real quick.
Okay.
Just briefly.
Okay.
And I'm not going to get it too close to the... So I was in Romney.
You were? When?
Yesterday.
Oh, you're kidding me. Where'd you go?
I'm serious. I'm serious about this. I have to know, where is Ann from? And
wow, Matt.
I don't know if I got the right place.
Okay.
But maybe this is familiar.
Yeah. How'd you find that? Yeah, that's where I grew up. That's not from 8 to 18. Wow. How'd you find that?
Mill Meadow?
Yeah. How'd you find it?
I'm a researcher.
Yeah.
What makes this fun is putting the pieces together. And when I prepare, I'm like, if I'm close enough, I'm going to go to their childhood home.
Okay.
At least one of them. I'd been to Nicholas County before, but I just felt like this piece of land and this house is so historically significant.
Yeah, my grandfather bought that house. So it's been in the family a little bit.
Right. So I spent some time in Romney. I found an interesting literary hall.
Oh, yes.
Which, if I'm not mistaken, 1819.
I don't know, but it's old. Yeah.
They collected 4,000 books.
Oh, I didn't know
at
that.
One point.
You know more than I do about Romney.
And it said the internet said that because of the Civil War,
Yeah.
it had been reduced to like 300
Okay.
or something. But I was like, wow, you came from a place with a literary hall. And this historic home. This is pretty cool. But yeah, I found Mill Meadow because I was like, okay, I'm going to find property that was attached to your father's name. And there was several addresses, but I was like, this has to be the one.
Yeah. Yeah. You're right.
So anyway,
Wow. Yeah.
I introduced that because I just feel like we got to know where you're from. You know, people listening, yes, you live here now, but
Yeah.
you grew up there.
Yeah. I grew up in Hampshire County. My family's been in that valley since before the Revolutionary War. I mean, some of my ancestors, and that particular place where I grew up, which we don't own it anymore, which is about 48 acres. My grandfather bought that I think in 47, and my dad grew up there as a teenager than all his younger siblings. So when I was little and we were living in Summersville, that was my grandparents' home. But then after my grandfather died, my grandmother moved in town, and we moved back to Romney and moved in there. But that's not our family farm we've had since 1819 is up the valley about six miles.
Oh, dang, I should have figured out where that was too.
Yeah. No.
But you know, you're another one of those writers that has gone away and come back. And so thinking of where you grew up and how your childhood in West Virginia has animated your stories. I mean, even just being there, I can see like that house in your stories.
Oh yeah, that house is very creepy. Yeah, it's in my stories for sure.
Yeah, so you know, how do you describe how West Virginia and your childhood in Romney and Summersville has influenced the way that you write and the things that you write about, which are very obviously about the environment and the threat that it all goes away? I
guess the most succinct way to answer that is in both places, in Summersville and Romney, I could constantly be in the woods, and I was allowed to constantly be in the woods or on the river. So I grew up with a really close relationship to being outside and to the land, and my dad had that. And so in Summersville, he taught me that too, but that's where I learned about strip mining, because Summersville and Nicholas County is a coal county. Hampshire County is agriculture. There's not any coal there. So when I was little, saw a lot of strip mining, and because my dad pointed it out and explained to me what it was, and so I had that experience down in Nicholas County, and then coming back up to Hampshire County. Because we lived in that place, we had 48 acres around us, and it was river, creek, fields, and woods, and so I was just in that a lot of the time, and just loved it. So the connection to the land and the love of the land, and knowing eventually, that the land was sacred, came from all that time spent there, and some of it just being out on it all the time, and some of it my dad directly telling me. So yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's the one thing that stood out to me the most. The most powerful chapter that I read in Strange as This Weather Has Been was Mogi's chapter.
Yeah, I love Mogi's chapter.
And when I was at Mill Meadow and driving around, it hit me even deeper. That idea of the higher hum. I mean, truly, I've told a million people this, similar to December Night, that was pulled out of Willa Cather's Death Comes for the Archbishop as a special chapter,
I don't know about this. Okay.
My brother got it as a gift for me several Christmases ago, so I have just that chapter that's a special bound chapter. If I had to pick one of yours to have its
I see
own
what you're
book,
saying. Yeah,
it would be the Mogi chapter. Because to me, it feels like, even though I haven't known you before today, really, that chapter speaks a lot to what you believe. Yeah,
it does. There's a lot of that chapter which is directly from interviews from disabled coal miners, and people that my sister and I interviewed were making black diamonds around mountaintop removal. But the dreams in there are almost all mine. So the dreams are my dreams.
Really?
Yeah, pretty much all of them.
Yeah, I was wondering where those came from. If someone else had told you and then you wrote it, or that makes it even more powerful.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then the story about the buck falling off the top, that happened to my brother and my cousin. So that's from them. But a lot of it is my sentiments, my beliefs.
Yeah. So I'm curious about whether or not you had a particular moment you can point to, or you felt that that moment of the higher hum?
Well, I have it all the time. I have it every day now. But when I was a kid, being on the river, probably being in the trough. That's a part of the river in Hampshire County that goes sort of through Hampshire and Hardy, that goes through a gorge. But I think I felt it a lot when I was little, but I didn't have a name for it. And I'm not sure that I discerned it as separate from just being in the woods, where I think as you get older that separates out, right? You don't feel it. You push down the intuition part, and you are driven by society to go to more of the intellectual, rational part. So I think, let's say from the time I was a teenager until probably late mid-30s, I probably ignored that, and then it came back. I'm
also curious, knowing that you left both, across the globe and then to Seattle before you came here, did you lose that higher hum, did you feel, or did you find other places that you could get that?
I found it in other places, but never like here. It's not as strong as here for me. I mean, I can feel it better here. And it takes making a relationship, so you can't drop into a place and feel it. I developed a really good relationship with a lot of the land in the Pacific Northwest. Yeah. And there were places where I could drop into it there, but never. Here it's omnipresent. Like I was just gone this weekend in D.C. and you get homesick for it right away because you can't feel it in other places. And just coming back here and driving up and again, it's partly because we've made a relationship with this land, and the way that we take care of it, but also the way we talk to it and sing to it and stuff. So yeah.
Oh, gosh, I love that, like how personal that is. But I mean, it's all throughout your stories. Yeah, that connection, and I agree. I think as a person who hasn't had a long-term home, I feel like I yearned for it for so long because I love being outside. Yeah. But I never felt like I got to know a place well enough. And I think in Minnesota, one of the things that I kept asking myself is, why am I spending all of my free time away from St. Paul and Minneapolis? Yeah. Why am I driving so far? Yeah. With the slightest bit of free time that I get on the weekends, what am I looking for out there? Yeah. And I mean, truly, I would go to the Minnesota equivalent of Franklin, where I live now in North Carolina, or Reedsville. I was finding those towns, but mostly I was finding the woods around those towns as a place to be with the land. And I think the one thing that really was difficult in Minnesota is it was so cold most of the year that I didn't really want to be out in that. But I think that was the first place where I realized, wow, there's something to the rhythm of that. Yeah. That does feel like,
Can you feel it in North Carolina?
Oh, yeah. Okay. And that's where I was leading to. The reason I left Minnesota is I never felt like I would feel home there. Yeah. That I could like die there and be happy. Yeah. But in general, I knew there was always going to be a distance. Yeah. And, part of that came too from not having a human community in the way that I have in North Carolina now. Yeah. So you feel really alone. Yeah. And now I have the best of both worlds where I feel like I'm really connected to the land for the first time in my life. Wow. That is so great. And then I have a community to be there for me and for me to be there for. Yeah. And that feels really special. Yeah. But I just, that chapter, it's like, you feel that moment and you're right. You don't know what to do with it. And we're told, and especially with the church. Yeah. Yeah. Not church thing. I mean, I grew up Catholic. So I feel like it would have been the same response if I would have asked a priest, right? In terms of dominion over the land for us. And I'm like, that's not what I'm looking for. Yeah. That's not how I feel inside. Yeah. So in many ways, that chapter gave me language to what I'm. Oh, good. I feel like I'm even still in the process of experiencing in North Carolina. Yeah. Where I feel like I'm, to take Cather's words, dissolving into something complete and great. Yeah. Like I really feel it. I feel 3 of the books I've chosen address this in some way because I feel really strongly that we have to rethink the way we have relationships with the natural world in order for us to survive and them to survive. I mean, they'll out-survive us, but so some of the books that I've chosen are about that. And this is partly in response to, I've been studying it pretty carefully for about 16 years because part of what happened for me after the anti-mountaintop removal activism that I did, and we had a few successes, but it was disillusioning to me about any kind of conventional activism.
And I started thinking, like, we have to go a lot farther than that. And I don't know if we will survive long enough to be able to make that kind of relationship that will balance things. But I think if you have integrity and humanity, you have to do it anyway. You have to keep doing the right thing, and try to look towards that. So
yeah. Well, I mean, I think this is one of the conversations I really wanted to have. So do you want to start with the first book that you have that deals with this?
Yeah.
So we can dive in?
Yep. I have a story about Mogi too in a little bit, because I just read from Mogi at the Smithsonian Museum of the American Indian on Saturday. So that's very funny that you bring up Mogi today, because I hadn't read from it in years. And I read
and I read it again before I came.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And it every single time, it's like the first time. That's how good it is.
That's great.
And I mean,
that's great.
So yeah, it was just really on the top of my mind. And again, it just felt like so much of who you are is in that.
Yeah.
That I could not bring it up. I think more people, if they read Strange as This Weather Has Been, would have a better relationship to the land. I mean, I 100%, and not even just because of that chapter. Yeah. The whole dang thing.
Thanks, Matt. That means a lot to me.
And I'm telling you, I've sold that book, hand sold that book so many people at City Lights, because it feels like people are yearning for that kind of story. They might not know where to get it. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's not a new book. I'm glad that it's...
And if somebody from West Virginia can say that no one's writing the real West Virginia, then, we get people coming in from Florida. They're like, oh, what's a good Appalachian book? Yeah. And I don't really have to sell Barbara Kingsolver.
Yeah, exactly.
Right now.
Yeah.
There's certain David Joy, Ron Rash, but truly, I believe in your writing so much. And Given Ground, too. Like, oh my gosh, what a book.
I'm glad you got copies of that. I'm impressed that you found that.
We keep finding good condition ones to bring in and put on my staff picks, at least one, right, just to have it, because there are just certain books, Cather, Welty, I mean, I'll sell them, Jesse. But anyway, just to say, like, I'm so glad you got to read that story, and that we get to kind of talk more about the spirit of that through these other books.
Yeah, I'm sure you're familiar with Robin Kimmerer. Mm-hmm. And so I'm having two of her books count as one.
Heck yeah.
If we even get to all six. But for those who are not familiar with her, I'm bringing up first The Serviceberry, which is the newest one that I guess just came out like in December, right?
We cannot keep that on the shelves.
Okay.
It is such a good,
all right.
Yeah, everybody's buying that thing.
Okay, good. Because The Serviceberry... how much do you sell Braiding Sweetgrass, the older one? Okay, yeah.
Both,
okay, great. The Serviceberry by Robin Wall Kimmerer. I think that, like I said, I've been just studying. I think that the most direct way that we can learn to have different relationships with the natural world is to study indigenous knowledge, of course, without appropriating it. And I feel that Kimmerer is a really good bridge between the native world and the non-native world, but also between spiritual world and science, because she's got credibility because she's got a doctorate in some kind of biology or botany or something, right? So, and she is indigenous. She is Potawatomi. I always pronounce that wrong. Please forgive me. So in The Serviceberry, this is sort of a compressed version with additional insights about the gift economy, moving from a capitalist commercial economy to a gift economy, which she is illustrating as part of the natural world. So the traditional ways, their relationship with the natural world was not extractive or use based. It was reciprocal. So you took something, you gave something back. And so she's talking about concepts of gratitude and respect, and it's a great book. I have a little passage I could read, but I think I'll hold off on that. Braiding Sweetgrass came out in 2013, and if you like The Serviceberry, you got to read Braiding Sweetgrass, because this extends some of what she says in The Serviceberry. It goes farther than just the gift economy. It's also about relationship between language and perception. Mm. It's about prophecies. Those are a couple of things that she addresses in here now. Oh, ceremony. But I've taught this book in at least 4 different classes, undergraduate classes. Not the entire book, but chapters from it. And they love it. I mean, it really moves them and changes them. And often at the end of the semester, when I have them write a self-reflection about what what was the book that most transformed them. That was Kimmerer's work. So, and interestingly enough, I've had great success with this book with conservative Christian students who, I'm always working with that in class and navigating that when we have the conservative Christian kids, but they really love Braiding Sweetgrass, this idea of the gift economy. And for some reason that resonates and it makes total sense to them. So that...
Why do you think that's so? Have they explained that? That's
a really good question, Matt. I'm not completely sure. I think it's a place where they can start where she starts where they are, right? So the chapter, The Gift of Strawberries, is often the one they talk about. And it's very accessible to a person who's not native without simplifying anything. And I think probably the conservative Christian kids who really understand Jesus get it, because as opposed to a lot of Christians we know these days, this is the kind of ethic that Kimmerer is promoting is a Jesus ethic, I think, in part. I mean, not necessarily a relationship with the Lamb, but definitely reciprocity, respect, gratitude, taking care of people who are maybe need extra help, that kind of thing.
Yeah, and I've always found it interesting, too, with how our political extremism has such strange effects on the way people will describe what they believe through the lens of Republican, Democrat, liberal, conservative, whereas like one person can be on an extreme in like a conservative way, and yet their life though is actually very much of the gift economy, is about reciprocity. And so it's like if you only observed how they live, you can tell they're inspired by Jesus.
Which is what it's like to live here as a queer person, right?
Right.
It's,
I've been so shocked, and especially in Macon County, North Carolina. I mean, we're a very pro-Trump county.
We are entirely.
And yet, it is the most generous place I've ever lived.
Yeah, I bet.
For nothing. Like, they give something for nothing.
Yeah, that's right.
Even, you know? So it's like... I can't even put language to that disconnect. Whereas then you get them talking about an issue, they become a completely different person. It's almost as if they forget their own life.
And so I agree.
I think because we spend so much time on language, the language of politics, that maybe we need stories about the action. And it could get people on board, because that's all that we're really, really talking about is how do we do this thing together? Well, we have guides for it. It just might not be in the language we're talking about right now. That's really interesting. Well, I'm curious too, the ones, not even just white Christian people, but the students that have given feedback and reflected on what's changed for them through this book. I'm curious if you can talk to that, and like what about these, or Braiding Sweetgrass in particular, like what were the biggest reflection points for students?
Well, I think it makes common sense. I mean, it really is common sense. It's about survival. And I think it's things that they've always intuited, but they haven't had any language for. They haven't had a system to talk about it with, because it's not part of our system, in terms of politics or economics or their education, really. And I also think they have a deep yearning for it, for this kind of connection. And I also think they're still closer to being little kids. So I think when a lot of people are little kids, they do get this, like I did, before you get it taught out of you.
If you want, I'd love for you to read the bit that you picked out. We have time for it.
This is in the Serviceberry. Let me find it. Okay, so this is from the Serviceberry. It's towards the end, and I think it's a good summing up of some of the most important points that she's making in the book. I cherish the notion of the gift economy, that we might back away from the grinding system which reduces everything to a commodity and leaves most of us bereft of what we really want, a sense of belonging and relationship and purpose and beauty, which can never be commoditized. I want to be part of a system in which wealth means having enough to share, and where gratification of meeting your family needs is not poisoned by destroying that possibility for someone else. I want to live in a society where the currency of exchange is gratitude, an infinitely renewable resource of kindness, which multiplies every time it is shared rather than depreciating with use. Anthropologists who study gift economies know that they function well in small, tightly knit communities. You might rightly observe that we no longer live in small, close-knit societies where generosity and mutual esteem structure our relations. But we could. It is within our power to create such webs of interdependence, quite outside the market economy. Maybe that is how we extract ourselves from a cannibal economy. Intentional communities of mutual self-reliance and reciprocity are the wave of the future, and their currency is sharing. The move toward a local food economy is not just about freshness and food miles and carbon footprints and soil organic matter. It is about all of those things, but it's also about the deep human desire for connection, for honor, to be in reciprocity with the gifts that are given you.
Oh, so good.
Yeah.
Oh, and the point that's really important, it is in our power.
Yeah. I'm glad you pointed that out.
We are not always victims of circumstance. There are some things that are out of our control.
Yeah.
But that, we have a lot to say about this. I mean, it is, we can do it.
Yeah. And I think the other important thing about her is that Appalachia is one of the places where that hasn't really died out among even European communities, and we are that. I mean, they're of course not just European, but especially in West Virginia, it's a very white place. But I think people here, with their connection to the land and their intimacy with the land and how much time they've spent in particular places not leaving, they have a better monitor inside to recognize some of these, and they're already practicing some of these values.
I'd have to agree, living everywhere else that I've lived, in every region except the Southwest, which ironically, I think the place I'd most live is around or in Taos, New Mexico, which to me feels oddly similar, opposite landscape.
It is,
but it feels similar to where I live now. Mm-hmm. But I agree. You talked about this in an interview years ago, where part of your writing is inspired by seeing that loss of culture in other places. Yeah. And not culture at large, but this idea of generosity. Yeah. And like the finer parts of culture, the everyday parts of culture that you don't get a lot of outside of Appalachia that you'd like to preserve. Yeah. So I think this hits exactly home to that. And people that don't live in Appalachia don't see that. Yeah. They don't know how alive it is. Yeah. And I think they're so used to the deadness of that culture.
I think so too.
I mean, you go to New York or DC, why would they miss it? Yeah. They don't know it exists.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
But I think now that I live in it, it would be hard to leave. Because I think, I remember when I had left Western and hadn't been working at City Lights yet, I was under the threat of leaving because I'm like, oh, do I get a job at another university? And I remember I became physically ill.
Oh, really?
Thinking about living in Fayetteville, Arkansas, or another college town, because it's just like, God, I'm going to be completely alone. Yeah. And I'm not saying every Appalachian community is the same or has the strength of that, but I do agree. Yeah, it's a real thing. Yeah. Well, I'm so glad you brought those in. 2 great books. Yeah. You can get them at City Lights too, anybody that listens.
I can't recommend them highly enough.
That's great. So what's the next
Okay, so the next one is I have a lot of books. I've read a lot of books about this subject, a lot of indigenous knowledge books, and also just books that are not necessarily grounded in indigenous. And I don't mean just North American indigenous, but indigenous across the world, especially in Australia. You have so much to learn from them. But this is different because this is a French book, and this is called Dear Man, 7 Years of Living in the Wild. Do you know this book?
No.
Okay, I think it came out in 2021, and it was translated in 2022.
Ooh, I can't wait for this. This looks awesome.
It's very interesting. So this guy, Geoffrey Delorme, I guess that's how can you pronounce French? I guess that's close enough. This is a young man who, from the time he was a little kid, felt much more kinship with animals and with people. And by the time he's 10, he's spending a lot of time at night out in the forests in someplace near his home in northern France. They don't name it. As he gets older and goes through his teen years and becomes more and more alienated from school and everything else about Western culture, he spends more and more time out in those woods. And finally, I think when he's in his late teens, he just moves out there. But he's still close to home, so he still sneaks back home sometimes to get food or a shower. But it doesn't seem to ever talk to his parents. He doesn't get along with his parents. Anyway, So this book is an account of 7 years that he lived in this forest with a particular group of deer. And the way he builds his relationships with the deer, how they get to know each other, it's really it's unlike anything I've ever read.
Wow.
I also recommend it highly. And it's also, I mean, because he's with the deer all the time, his observations of the natural world around them are just exquisite. But also he's trying to survive. He really is trying to survive out there. So he's making a relationship with the woods in a way that he wouldn't if he was just going out there every day for an afternoon to hang out with them. And so he has to figure out how to stay warm in the winter and what to eat and all that. So yeah, and becomes very close to. He also is a photographer, so he has pictures of these deer that are his friends. Yeah. I can't remember how I found out about this. No, it has a very unhappy ending, of course, because they come in and log and the deer. Yeah. So
we ruin every good thing.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
I mean,
That's right.
our way.
And this guy Jeffroy, I guess he pronounced it Jeffroy, I don't know. He leaves eventually after 7 years and decides that his calling now is to tell people about the deer, and show his photographs and how he was able to become friends with them.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. It's really
I
good.
love stories like this.
Yeah, it's really good.
I mean, it's because it's something I could never do.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah, I know. I like to dream that I could do it.
But I
yeah.
like that, there are things, though, that we can learn from, even though these stories are an extreme that most of us wouldn't go to.
Yeah.
There's still something in there.
Yeah.
And so I'm curious what, because these are, the thing I love about this podcast is these books are gifts, right? Like the goal is to spread the message.
Yeah.
That's the whole thing. You build a library of all of these because your books are so different than everybody else's.
Yeah.
And so I'm curious what you think, having read this, how did he build this relationship? Like, what was the nature of his?
It was time. He just spent a whole lot of time out there watching them, not approaching them, and they got used to him. And I think there was one particular deer who was a little more confident and friendly than others, and so that's kind of how he started his relationship with with this little herd, and then they became more comfortable with him. To the point where they let him be nearby when they were having fawns, and he was really part of them. Yeah, he was really part of them. And you know what? Let me read. I want to read something from this. This will help explain.
Heck yeah.
How he made the relationship. Okay, so this is to answer your part of your question about how he actually makes friendships with them. I think this is so important. To live in harmony with roe deer and to be able to walk behind them, I also cast off the swirling habit of thought, which acts like a parasite on my experiences. That's certainly the most difficult thing. But after a year, I come to see the human world as ignorant in a way. Alone in the forest with the roe deer, I don't think about anything. I don't define in words what I see, breathe, or hear. I am just happy to be here with them and to feel nature rather than to strip it bare. I speak very little in order to leave all the room to my intuition. I challenge myself to get to know Daggett by imitating him, observing him, and trying to understand him. He seems just as curious to find out about me, if not more so. Then I leave room for feelings, taking this opportunity to be rather than to do or to think. When I manage to do that, I fall very quickly under the spell of these cheeky and playful little creatures, which have developed the skill and the habit of living at the expense of humans, often to the point of venturing into our orchards or vegetable gardens. So I think I find that very interesting that he has disciplined himself not to think. And that I think the thinking mind probably drives them, frightens them, and makes them wary, right? If they can feel your thinking, and it reminds me of Barry Lopez, who I don't have his books in my stack, but I recommend all of them. Lopez talks about being with hunters, and I forget which book this is in. It might be Arctic Dreams.
I still have not read that.
Oh.
And actually, a friend of mine just texted me last week.
Yeah.
A passage that she'd read.
Yeah.
She's like, "Hey, you've read this, right?" And I was like, "No."
That's it. Well, that's
So
great because it's 87. And it's even more relevant now.
Yeah. I got to do it. But anyway.
He talks about being with hunters, Inuit. I forget exactly who. I think it was Inuit hunters, and the way that they were successful with their hunting and with being in the natural world was not thinking in the way that we do analytically. So when they encountered an animal they got out of their head and they went into all these different senses, and they also did not jump to seeing it as, analyzing it, drawing conclusions about the animal, even seeing it as metaphor, right? They just stayed with the animal, and I think to do that you got to stay in your body.
Wow.
So he's kind of articulating that, I think.
Yeah, I mean, that's almost impossible for most of us to comprehend.
Yeah.
Like just
it
letting
takes
go
a lot
of
of practice.
Like letting go of thought.
Yeah,
What?
yeah.
I mean, that's literally all we do, and that's honestly what causes our anxiety.
Exactly. Yeah.
If we could all learn not to, just kill that constant thought, it would be quite a miracle.
Yeah.
But this reminds me a little bit of Richard Grant, who is British born, but similar to me, but on a grander scale, just homeless. In terms of the joke is he had miscellaneous on his, birth certificate.
Oh yeah.
Because his parents were in India and he lived there. But anyway, the first book I read of his was Dispatches from Pluto, where he moves from New York City to the Mississippi Delta.
Oh, okay.
Because he was super depressed and he was getting angry at everything.
Yeah,
He's like, I got to do something. So he goes to the most extreme possible, at least in the U.S., and goes from New York to the Delta.
Yeah.
So he wrote that book. He wrote another one, Living in Mississippi, about Natchez, which was great. And then he wrote his latest one, which is Race to the Bottom of Crazy, Dispatches from Arizona, where he moves back after 20-some years with his now wife and daughter, and reflections on being back and just the state of Arizona now and how crazy its history is as well.
Yeah.
But anyway, I think you would actually love it because a lot of it deals with the water supply. And that's where he gets his race to the bottom of crazy, is how that's dwindling. But anyway, Richard is so cool. He's a great writer.
What's his last name?
Grant.
Okay.
And I got to interview him last year at the Mississippi Book Festival about his latest book. Now, one of the chapters is where he was told about some really long hike in one of the deserts in Arizona. I mean, we're not talking about day hike. Yeah. 3 days he was out there alone. And at the end, his water leaked out. Wow. And he was almost dead by the time he got to his car. He does this a lot. Just pushes himself to the brink. But in our interview, one of the things he said that really stuck with me is how, and I think he remarks about it in the book too, but just hearing him talk about after the second day, completely away from human noise, that you start hearing things that there's no way you would have heard. It completely changes the way you hear. Yeah. Same thing with vision. He's like, I was seeing things in my peripheral. Yeah. He's like, my peripheral vision was gone. Yeah. And he didn't even realize it until, but you can't do it in 2 hours. Yeah. He's like, that's right. It took several days for him to he would see something, a lizard in the far corner of his eye. Yeah. And even, stars, obviously, at night is something that you don't see in most places. But he was talking about how actually shocking to the system that was, that it freaks you out when you realize getting used to city noise and city light and all of this is so damaging. Yeah. And then once you can embrace now being out and being able to see and hear this way, it's amazing. Yeah. But then you have to go back at some point. Yeah. So it's it's hard to compromise between 7 years in the wild and living how we typically live day to day. I mean, it feels like you have...
That's very interesting.
Yeah.
What's the name of this book?
A Race to the Bottom of Crazy.
Race to the Bottom of Crazy. Okay.
Dispatches from Arizona.
Okay.
And so I wish I could remember which hike it is.
Oh, that's okay. I'll get the book.
But how many places are that silent or lack, human movement? Yeah. Yeah. To the point that you could even get to the focus level of that. I mean, so anyway.
Well, the peripheral vision, that's in a lot of and not a lot, but several books I read about indigenous perception and knowledge is how we've lost peripheral vision and how they have to have peripheral vision to be, if they are hunters and gatherers, So, yeah.
I guess it goes to show we don't use what we don't need.
Yeah.
In that way. I mean, yeah. But it's and part of me is like, man, maybe I'll now do that trail.
Well, is what you just told me in this book, or was that part of the interview? Okay, cool. Okay.
Yeah, and we talked about it in the interview. Okay. But I'd forgotten for a second that obviously that came from the book. Okay. But that chapter's amazing. Yeah, I want to read that. Yeah. And one of his chapters also is his encounter with a Navajo couple. Okay. And that's a really beautiful moment that I think you'll love too. Yeah. It's not memoir, it's not history, it's not travel writing. Yeah. And I don't know how you'll like, as a writer, you know, I'm always like, oh, are you going to like how they write?
Oh, no, I've got a wide,
Yeah, I think you'll appreciate, they're alternating chapters between the history of Arizona.
Okay.
Phoenix in particular, because it's the source of so many of the environmental problems.
Yeah.
And then it goes into his own experiences, both historically when he lived there before, and then now, like the relationship with his daughter plays in such a factor in this.
Okay.
And now him even being more conscious of some of the issues that we're facing, because now he has a child to deal with, and the water's running dry, and you know, the culture out there is insane politically in many ways. So, there's a ton of great stories, but you'll love that chapter in particular.
What year did this come out? Do you remember?
Last year.
Okay, great.
Yeah. So what about the next one?
I'm going to save this one to last. This is another one about natural world. I want to talk the one that I really want to talk about, I don't have because I realize I keep giving it away.
That's okay.
And it's The Chaos Machine by Max Fisher. Do you know that book?
No.
Okay, The Chaos Machine. It's a complete expose on the social media world, politics of the social media world, and the tech billionaires. And I have to say, people need to read it like immediately. Came out in 2022. It traces, I mean, a lot of it at the beginning is talking about how algorithms work, which I think a lot of us know how, the way that they drive people into narrower rabbit holes of anger and rage. Not anger and fear and hatred, whatever's the most sensational. But it becomes obviously even more urgent to read it with what we've learned just in the last 6 weeks about how the kowtowing of the tech billionaires and the collaboration with the regime. But it was, I've never been a fan of social media or even technology, but reading this was such a clear, completely researched, supported with examples how they have done what they've done. And Max Fisher is a New York Times investigative reporter, and he's really amazing. But it includes, after a lot of sections, demonstrating how the algorithms work and how AI drives people rewire. Basically, I mean, the subtitles, how social media is rewiring our brains and our world, I think. But specific examples from Sri Lanka and Burma, where there were massacres because of Facebook. So he traces it very clearly and including, I don't know how to pronounce, but in Burma, the Rohingya people, that they're refugees and they're always persecuting them. But they can break down exactly how people were violently compelled to pursue these people through Facebook posts and through social media and killed them. And the same in Sri Lanka. It was so bad in Sri Lanka. And again, it was another out-group that they wanted to attack. Again, it was driven by social media. And it was so bad that the government in Sri Lanka just shut down social media. They shut down Facebook. And when they did shut down Facebook, it stopped. The riots stopped when Facebook stopped. And in the meantime, they'd been getting hold of Facebook and saying, hey, you got to help us out here. This is going on. They didn't hear anything from Facebook until they shut it down. And then Facebook is like, it doesn't seem to be much traffic over there. What's going on? So it just, for me, is a premonition of, and also just how rotten at the core they are.
Yeah.
Including quotes about how they were told let me read a couple of quotes from this book.
Yeah, I would love to hear these.
It helps give you some insight on these, not just the billionaires, but all their minions, right? So
yeah, it's the whole worship of the ideas.
Yeah.
That gets, and then people will defend it at all costs.
Exactly.
And including
the left. Well, I'm saying the left and the right?
Yeah.
So the left thinks they're above it. And
if you're in it, you're in it.
Yeah.
There is no difference.
Yeah, that's right. You just get driven to a different rabbit hole.
And I've tried to, and what's really interesting is how brittle people are when you call this out.
That's a good word for it. That's a good word for it.
Truly. I mean, you want to see a person crack, call them out on the fact that they're no different than the exact opposite person, because they're both becoming who they are or have become who they are because of the same technology.
Exactly.
And it's so easy to see too.
Yeah.
Like, I'm going to be honest, part of the reason I love having the same friends from elementary school is we all met well before technology was infiltrated in our lives. So they're the few people I can have, and in this podcast too, like real life nuanced conversations that don't drift into insanity.
Yeah.
And what was I saw an interview with someone who wrote a book about the way that language has changed because of social media, but it was like a thought terminating cliche is what she was talking about. And on both sides of the extremes, it's a term, something like to kill conversation, to kill thought that someone can use. Like, do your research.
Oh.
Right. But there's, she gives a ton of examples. And
Who's this?
I do not remember.
Okay.
She's a reporter also.
Okay.
But I thought that and we all have seen it or have experienced it, that thought terminating cliche that someone will say something that is almost, it's impossible to respond to.
Yes.
And that's the whole point.
Yes.
Because then instead of having a dialogue about an issue, you can just say something and then you win. Yeah. But you don't actually win. You just say something that's impossible to counter or continue on with. Yes. And it's like, all right. Yeah, I wish, oh man, I'll try to put it in the notes of this so that people can. But
you got to tell me
thought-terminating cliche is what so many people use. And it is not just one side of the political spectrum. Yeah,
because this is what frustrates me so much about the Democrats. They had 4 years to get this in hand, and they did absolutely nothing. They all drank the Kool-Aid. And anyway, I'll stop there.
I hear you.
Okay. So this book, I've read it like 3 times.
I don't know if I want to read it. I do, but I don't.
A lot of people don't read it that I recommend it because it is pretty dark, but it's so important.
We need it.
Yeah, especially right now. And okay, so here's something. By the end of the 2000s, okay, this is speaking about, there's a whole section about the Silicon Valley culture, the way they think of themselves, the way they started with their ideas to disrupt, to destroy, to tear everything down, starting back in the 60s and 70s and build this new culture. But of course, they had this utopian idea that was stupid and immature. I mean, part of it's just like complete human immaturity, right? They're not evolved in any way. So here's an example. By the late 2000s, virtually every employer in town in Silicon Valley was telling hires that designing apps put them, in terms of importance, somewhere between the United Nations and the League of Superheroes. It was a culture where taking the reins of global governance didn't feel so outlandish. That's the end of that quote. And then investors and employers were constantly telling them, quote, "You are different from other people, smarter, better, rightful masters of the universe." And so now we see it coming home, right? So I really recommend The Chaos Machine, and there's so many examples of when different countries have pulled the plug or have done even just experiments in small towns in Germany where they don't let people look at it for a week, and what the mood and the attitudes towards immigrants, how quickly they change.
And I don't know, does that book then use that as like a blueprint of how we can unplug?
Like,
no, is it making any case that
it doesn't really go that far? I mean, it ends with how Trump was created by social media, but even more so Bolsonaro in Brazil, because the author feels that Trump had some. I mean, there was some he believes Bolsonaro is completely constructed by social media, completely.
Wow.
Yeah, and they have a lot of evidence of that. So.
Well, yeah, and I think, look. We can get sensitive about it. I grew up in a generation that has struggled with their relationship to technology. I have my whole life. I remember I deleted Twitter for the first time when I was in graduate school at Vanderbilt. I had it for like 2 years, and it was like 3:30 in the morning, and I couldn't stop reading about this issue with someone in college basketball. And I remember being like, I'm sick. What am I doing right now? I should be asleep. I should be at the very least reading a book or doing, watching a good movie. Mm-hmm. And then I deleted it. And, now I only have social media for Story Made Project, for the podcast, and then City Lights. Yeah. I have to have and I created a fake Facebook account under the name of a villain in Justified.
Oh, okay. That's great.
Just so that no one can find me. But I think the reason this book is resonating with me, and I think I want to read it, is because we get so defensive about why we use it. Yeah. And I'm not saying it's not valid. Yeah. Yeah. I have met so many cool people, including for this project through social media. Yeah. Yes, there's some good things that happen, but on the whole, we have to have a real conversation about how destructive this is, not interpersonally only, globally.
They also talk about what happens to social movements that are created by social media, and including in Egypt, but also what usually happens with a social movement that's only created online is there's an initial huge turnout. There's a little bit, there's a span of time and then it falls away because no time was spent making personal relationships or finding common ground or any kind, anything like that to build towards an actual movement.
And that is making me realize the very direct connection between these books. If we want a better relationship with the land and each other, time.
You're right. Yeah.
I mean, anything that is good, that is strong and lasting, sustainable takes time.
Yeah.
And that's a social movement, and that's cultivating a relationship with the land. Yeah, you can't drop in on any of it
that's right.
and expect it to last.
Yeah.
So how do we, I mean, it's a big question, but it's the essential question. But I find that interesting. Like the ways that we
connected.
have better human relationships is time, thought, maybe not too much thought. But and then with the earth, we need to spend time with it. It's the only way that we understand anything, truly. And I just feel like, social media, if you want to take the term build, there's nothing that you can build through that.
Yeah.
No real friendship, no real movement. Definitely not with the land. If anything, taking a picture of every damn thing you see completely takes you away from the experience of the thing.
That's right.
You'll never be Mogi if you have your cell phone out in the woods. Like, don't we all want that type of connection, even if it's leads to crazy dreams? Anyway, like I'm so glad you brought this up because it is all connected.
Yeah, it is.
And social media is damaging so much, but it's so scary to think about even a world without it at this point for most people because we've put so much of our identity. Yeah. Oh, what happens to my business if you get off? Well, then you run your business without it. Yeah. There's no evidence to suggest really on the whole that, I mean, you have to do business differently. Yeah. So, are you really worried about if you disconnect from it, losing friends? Are those your friends?
Exactly, yeah.
It's nice to have those connections, I suppose, in some way. But anyway, it's just corroded our souls and political systems. Yeah. Gosh. Well, I have a feeling I'm going to dive into that because I like to suffer. But I like to learn more than anything. Yeah. And so that's going to be a good one. Yeah. Oh, gosh. Well, what about the next one?
Let me jump around. Let's see what's going to be. Okay, I think I'll move into country queers.
Oh, I'm excited about it.
Since we were talking about building community and being human. Are you familiar with this one? I figured you were, yeah. So this is Country Queers, a love letter from put together by Ray Geringer. And Ray is a wonderful writer and podcast person from West Virginia. And she spent 10 years going all over the country, not just Appalachia, and talking to queer people who are making lives for themselves in rural areas, part to disprove the assumption that queer people could only have a good life in cities, that you needed to go to a city to be queer. And she talks to people, like I say, it's over the course of 10 years. She travels all over the country. She talks to people of all ages who identify in a variety of different ways, and shows, it's just such a testament to resilience and courage and humanity and how to build a community build a family that's not necessarily your blood family. And these, again, are things that even just as we've gone through this year, we need to know more how to do. And queer people have more practice at this. And it also, time after time, and not in every case, most of these people are living peacefully alongside neighbors who are not necessarily love gay people. But it's so it resonates for me because I live here where everybody one person down the road voted for Harris, but everybody else, this is very, very Trump country. And as we spoke about a little earlier, generous, helpful, annoying in some ways with their loud machinery. But I
have the same problem. I'm like, shut up. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Other than that, it's a peaceful place to live and it's more friendly than Seattle. So that's not to say that, it's easy, especially so many students I've had at WVU who grew up queer here and had to deal with their families and their churches around that and how traumatizing and horrible that's been. But
yeah. And it's important to remember though, and it's really hard when you've experienced that trauma. Yeah. But not every environment is going to be like that. Yeah. And this is a really inspiring book for me for several reasons. Like I'm obviously a huge proponent of going around and talking to people and learning about places. But in specific, 10 years is a long time to do something. But again, I really won't consume it, and if it hasn't taken quite some time, because I just feel like, think of how much effort that took.
Yeah.
And how much you have to really believe in this project to do it for that long and to highlight these stories. And it also represented, a concept that I stole from Welty that is really important to this project, but that of, the invisible veil of indifference that falls between us. That her stories were parting a curtain.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's what this is.
Yeah.
That there are so many ways you can live as a queer person.
Yeah.
And they're not all going to be perfect. None of them will be. But they're not all like where you came from. Yeah. And there are going to be communities you can thrive in. And so what a beautiful thing to present to the world. Yeah. All of these different stories. So I'm so glad you brought it in, because we just, again, lack knowledge of where all these people live. Yeah. And how they do it. And so to bring it all together. Yeah. Yeah. It's a really inspiring book, and one that I think you can read even if you're not queer.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Definitely.
Even more so.
They're pretty short, because they're from the longer version that she did on the podcast. So it's a pretty quick read. There's a lot of wonderful photographs too.
Yeah. The photos are cool.
And also about Ray speaking from her life, and also Ray as a person, and also the persona that which is the same. And, she doesn't assume a persona to do these oral histories, but so down to earth, so open, so humble. And it's also just an example of how to be a human being, the way that she treats people. So, and I knew about the book, but I did get to see Ray read from it at Monkey Wrench Books in Morgantown. Do you know Monkey Wrench Books?
I've heard of it.
Monkey Wrench is important. It's brand new, and it's like everyone's thrilled because we finally have an independent bookstore, and it's a political. I mean, it's how can I say it? It's definitely a force in the community for justice. Yeah. But Ray read there in that place, and it's a small space, but it was packed with queer kids. I mean, just
not surprised.
And they were so,
That's beautiful.
The environment and the vibe was just incredible.
I'm glad you gave a shout out to them, because I mean, the importance of a space like that. Yes. How many years had it been since there was there ever an indie bookstore? Yeah, when I was in college, I don't know. When I was in college, there were used bookstores. I'm not sure there was an outright I think there have been, but it's been a long, long time. I'm biased as someone who hosts events for a small Appalachian indie bookstore, but it's a vital part of a community. And to be able to, I mean, of course they showed up. You should drop in tomorrow. I think I'm going to. Yeah. That would be really cool. And Lindsay's the woman who runs it. You could introduce yourself. Heck yeah. That. Yeah. Oh, that's sweet. Yeah, it's interesting you say, living here compared to Seattle. And, there's always assumptions made of what community, how good a community is somewhere. Yeah. Often because of what we see on the internet. Yeah. And in reality, it's not that. Yeah. I mean, you would think Seattle would be the most welcoming place of all. Yeah. Or Portland, or, my friend just moved to Portland from a small town in Western Washington. Oh, okay. Poulsbo. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Poulsbo. And he moved to Portland because Nike made him come into the office. But he's really struggling with the lack of warmth. Portland is a weird place. And, but again, what it's marketed as is different than the reality. Yeah. So again, it's just giving people stories to say, hey, your life can look beautiful and you can thrive and persist in so many different ways in so many different places. So that's really cool. Yeah. Oh, I love it. Glad you brought that one in. What's number 5? Number 5. This one's very important for me to talk about. This is The Cheneysville Incident by David Bradley. Have you heard of this book? I have not. Okay. The Cheneysville Incident by David Bradley is one of, I would say, the most important Appalachian literature book that nobody knows about. And it's Black Appalachian literature. It's Black history. It was published in 1981. And Bradley is from Bedford, Pennsylvania. Now, Bedford, PA is north of Cumberland, so it's right above the Mason-Dixon line, and it's western PA, and so it's a geographic space that's very fraught in terms of slavery and Civil War. So it's an incredible novel, and I don't know of any other Black histories about that region, and it's not a part of Appalachia that anybody thinks about very much. No, but it's also 60 miles north of Romney. So I knew about it, and I'll tell you how I found this book later. But the
Premise of the book is there is an African-American historian in Philadelphia, male, who's from Bedford, and he is trying to uncover the real history of, I think it's some letters or some kind of information he's found in his family home. So he's reconstructing that by going backwards and backwards and backwards into slavery. And the I don't know how much to tell about it, but the most climactic part of it is a man who takes people across the border and takes escaped slaves into Pennsylvania and has to get past this part of Pennsylvania, right, to really get them free, even though legally. No, I guess it wouldn't, because the Fugitive Slave Act was still, and at the time he's writing, there was still the Fugitive Slave Act, so it wasn't just that part of PA. But the writing is phenomenal. The critics compare this to Song of Solomon and also Invisible Man. His writing is off the charts, and I'll read a little bit from it.
Heck yeah.
Just the artistic quality. There is also something that we need to take into consideration with it is that, and again, like I say, it was published in 1981, it got a Penn Faulkner. The narrator is misogynist in a way that so many men were in the 70s, which is when it was written, or before that, right? But it's, so when you read it, it raises the question of, can you get through this misogyny to read this unique book by this black man about black history? And the question of how much, the old question of how much do you cut him a break because of the time period and when he grew up? How much is really the narrator? How much is really the author? The opinions that are being expressed. And then there's another complication, which is a lot of this is the narrator telling this story to his white girlfriend. And so that relationship is also fraught racially and gender-wise. And there is a sort of transformation at the end. So I highly recommend the book. I warn people that you're going to have to wade through. The narrator is very bitter and some misogyny, but it's so overlooked and it's so important, I think. It's just a really important book.
I have never once heard of this, which seems like I should have. Yeah,
it was reprinted because I had a really old one, like from the 80s. This one, I think, was reprinted in the last 5 or 10 years. Oh, yeah, David signed it. Here's how I know about it. When Given Ground won the Bakeless Prize, David was the judge.
Whoa.
Yeah, so I had no idea who he was. And that was a huge break for me, because I'm sure one reason I won is because David knew exactly what I was writing about.
Yeah.
Because he grew up, an hour from me. So we became friends, and he's helped me in other ways too. He lives out in San Diego. He's lived in San Diego for a very long time. So that's how I got to know. That's the only way I knew about the book. Because then I met him at Breadloaf, because we were both at Breadloaf, because that was part of the prize.
I love how those connections form.
Yeah.
Because it really is kind of an obscure part of the country.
Yes, it is.
That is not even just, it's not even misunderstood. It's like no one even knows enough to understand it.
That's right. Yeah, no, nobody
it's a weird borderland.
Yes, it is.
It's not like, Canada or Mexico border.
Yeah.
There's a ton of those in the U.S., though, that it's like, honestly, even driving through here, it had been a while because, first of all, where am I even going that I would go through here?
I know, yeah.
But, yeah, and I'm more adventurous than most.
Yes.
So then it begs the question, who comes here at all?
Yeah.
If they don't live here or have, like, a real reason. So, I'm really excited to read this because...
Yeah, see what you think. Tell me what you think.
I like overlooked stories, and especially about places that you don't think have significant things happen.
Yeah.
This is going to be good. You said you wanted to read something to show the artistic nature of it?
It's over 400 pages. There are things about it that people are going to resist now to read it, because it's well over 400 pages, and it's dense. Let me find out. I have it on here.
Well, we have to rewire our brains with dense books.
I totally agree with that, but not everyone agrees with me. And the other thing this book does, which I have not seen, and it really is so much about the people's relationship with Appalachian land. Very close relationship. I'm going to read part. I think the last 50 pages of this novel are some of the best writing in American literature. I'm going to read a little bit just to give you a sense.
Please do.
The story is being told by the narrator of this book, who is the contemporary historian, but he's talking about this guy who helped slaves escape. And this guy who helps slaves escape, whose name is CK, is being pursued by people who are coming to capture the slaves, recapture the slaves. And CK has taken off in a different direction to try to be a decoy and get him away from him. And so he tried to run faster, and at the same time started thinking again, going through all the tricks of the trail that he knew. He found none that would help. And then he recalled a day, years before, when he had been hunting and reconnoitering, not on this side of the mountain, but on the other, and had come across a stream. He had noticed it because it ran south instead of east or west, its natural tendency to go straight downhill being arrested by the configurations of rock. It was not a large stream, but it was an old stream, and over the centuries it had cut down into the rock, creating a gorge, a jagged gash in the mountainside nearly 3 miles long. The gorge was deep, 100 feet or more, but not wide, 4 or 5 feet at the bottom, opening out to 9 or 10 at the top. And CK had thought that if a man was desperate enough and strong enough, he could use that gorge, leading his pursuers to the center of its run and making the leap, leaving them with the choice of following and perhaps failing to make it, or of going around 1.5 miles to the end and another 1.5 miles back to pick up the trail again. A man could make a lot out of a 3-mile lead, or so he had thought at the time, and so he thought now, because he was desperate. His strength was going more quickly than he would have thought possible, far more quickly than darkness and snow were falling to give him concealment. It would be that desperation maneuver or nothing. He only hoped he knew where he was, that he could find the gorge at all. Then it goes on from there.
Wow. I can tell
Yeah,
the kinship there with you. Yeah, wow. Ooh, I'm excited about that.
Yeah.
Goodness gracious. Gosh, yeah, it bothers me that I don't know that.
It's strange.
But this is why...
Nobody knows it. Don't be bothered, because nobody knows it.
But this is why I do it.
Yeah.
I mean, to be honest, I've read a lot of books. And with the close to 200 at this point that have been shared, I haven't heard of a ton of them.
Huh.
So it's cool to see what comes out when you propose this exercise.
Yeah.
Because it's not best book.
Yeah.
Not, favorite book. Not from a particular time period.
Yeah.
It's just, what would you give to someone?
Yeah.
And I've been so shocked with a lot of authors. And then what's really cool is to see the connections between them all. And just seeing that revealed as you go. And this one's a break from the other ones.
Yes, it is.
But the personal connection there, and the fact that he was a judge, which, good on David for judging correctly.
Well, I think he also gets the higher hum. So if you read the whole thing,
yeah.
I think that he gets that.
Gosh, now I'm like, which one do I start with?
Yeah.
Maybe I'll do what I typically do, which is have all 4 going.
Okay,
at the same time.
Yeah.
Oh man. Okay, what we got?
Here's the last one. Here's the last one. Okay, so this is Bloodroot by Bill King. You seem like you know this.
I have had this as, I have a picture of it on my phone.
Okay, good.
Under my, this is what I need to read.
Yeah.
And I just haven't yet.
Yeah, okay.
So when I saw the cover, I was like, I've been waiting to pick that up.
How did you find out about it?
It was an author.
Okay.
Who told me that this is one of the best poetry books they've read.
Okay, good.
And I am blanking on who it was.
Okay, well, that's great.
They told me to read this.
Okay.
So now you are going to give me even more.
Okay, yeah. Bill was a friend of mine. So this is Bloodroot Poems by Bill King.
I love that cover too.
Yeah,
really
good. And Bill was an amazing human being who taught at Davis and Elkins College in Elkins, and a poet and an outdoorsman, fisherman, a lover of West Virginia, a lover of the natural world here. He grew up in Roanoke, so he was and he was out in the woods from the time he was a little kid too. So over the course of his career, he put together this collection, and he died right before it came out. So he struggled with cancer for about 12 years going back. He died at 58 in the summer of 23. Oh, no. And he'd had cancer for 12 years, and he would go in remission, he'd be fine, and then he wouldn't. And then finally he died. It was really very tragic. And he died before this. He saw a copy of this, but he didn't get to live to promote it or to read from it or to, make people familiar with it. So It's very sad.
It's a good way to honor him, though.
But
by
he's
sharing it.
but it's really good. I mean, it's not just that, oh, this is my friend who died and he wrote poems. I mean, they're like really
Yeah.
good poems.
I believe you.
And they too address a relationship with the natural world, and he's coming at it in part as someone who lives in the Elkins area and has been out, spent so much time outside, and that's one of the most beautiful areas in the world, that area in Randolph and Pocahontas
Pretty stunning.
County. Yeah. But also as someone who's learning how to spiritually survive cancer, I guess is one way to put it. And so so he often sees how the natural world, especially here in West Virginia, where it's so much of it's been destroyed or hurt, reflects his own situation, including its resurrection or resurgence, the way that the land comes back after it's hurt so badly. Yeah. So their cancer poems or natural world poems, they usually come together. He was just an incredible human being, and I think one reason he only has one book, at age 58, is because he was such a good teacher and friend and family, taking care of his family. He's just a really good person. So I was going to close my discussion of these books by reading a poem by Bill.
Please do.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd love it.
So he's going to refer to the Shavers. That's the Shavers Fork River, which is a tributary of the headwaters of the Cheat River and near Elkins, and that was his favorite river, and he trout fished there a whole lot. So this is the last poem in the book, and it's called Final Note. Even when I can't hear it, I hear it. The shavers rolling over round wall stones and slingshot pebbles. Broken ledges fallen and drowned but full of ancient talk. The broken stems of sea flowers, the open mouths of lamp shells filled with lime. If the water's up, step in upstream and push slantwise for the one slab that still overhangs. Grab the upturned edge of that bygone ocean's bottom and tread, taking in what you can before letting go and re-entering the now muted flow. Along the bottom, a shoal of hognose lumber upstream, smallmouth and brook trout fin inside a leafless tree. Before pushing up from the shallows, cleave a school of translucent darters and hear again the river's swift issuance, the rain of your lowered head streaming into sky. Down, down the rippling shallows of summer drumming under ice. This is no mumbled prayer against oblivion. It is the push and flutter of 1,000 seeps and springs and runs braided into a roar. You can hear it any day, bending trees on the ridge above town or buffeting down Kelly Mountain coming home. It will be the final note. After words and understanding go, as I float over the strange jumbled garden and beneath the jeweled green tongues of fern rooted high above the shore.